Before I get into the final presenter, which is me, here. I just want to say something about Sid there. When she was in grade 3, I saw her at a talent show, and she was wearing a green sparkly outfit, and she was doing a duet thing. And I remember her sitting on the bench when she was done, and I looked at my grade partner, Leanne Schweitzer, and I said, I gotta have her in my class. She just had a lot of personality and a lot of ease about her. And the year that I didn't have her for a year, I had her for about 7 months. And as the time went by, I was unbelievably impressed with how she handled life. She was so centered and so articulate about things. We would go on fun runs a lot back then on Fridays. And on one of these fun runs, we walked together, and I had one of the best conversations with a human being with her. To the point where one of the other boys came running over and started talking. I said, you need to go away, because we're having a really good conversation right now. I remember getting the email from Mom telling me that she was going to leave in a few days. I remember emailing back and saying, you're taking my girl? I loved her. I remember every day, or the very next day, she came to school with her head down. And I usually stand with my back against a corner and out in the hallway, and I just watched her come down the hallway with her head down, and I just kept my eyes on her until she looked at me, and she said, my mom's gonna, and I said, I got it. And I remember how the rest of the week, she is a super vibrant girl, and she was really quiet. I remember how the second last day, the desk arrangement I had was a group of 4 right near my desk, and hers was the closest corner to me with her back to me. And she wasn't doing much work. And so I remember walking by and putting my hand on her shoulder and saying, life still goes on. You still got to do your work regardless. And I remember bawling the day that she left. And then she had to run back in to grab something else. I thought she wanted to say goodbye again, but she had to pick something up. And to be able to sit back and watch her become more than I thought. Like, I thought she was going to be a pretty big deal, and she's becoming even greater than that. It's just a real treat, and I adore her. So anyway, I just thought I should mention that. I'm cognizant of the time where we're at, and I want to get you guys out of here at a certain time. And if when I'm done talking, I'll bring up all the speakers, and we'll have a little picture together if family wanted to take some pictures. There's a meet and greet. There's going to be snacks and things if you want to stay and talk. If not, have a good night and drive safely. So tonight I wanted to talk about my story. I don't really have a teacher that made a big deal in my life growing up. Like in college, Duff Crerar, who's here, he was somebody who taught me many courses, and I always seemed to get an 8 out of 9 on everything I did. And I appreciate that he's here because he's one of the 2 people that I think of when I think of my dad. So I appreciate it, Duff. But speaking of my dad, his name was Bill McCracken. He was the president of the college here back in the early 90s. His secretary, Maureen, is here, and I appreciate her coming. He was the first person to teach me about a thing called emotional intelligence. And my dad wasn't super talkative about things, but I watched him do things. And I learned, I think, from watching what he would do, and I tried to apply a lot of that in my class, and I try to do that still, although I'm a bit more jaded about things. This is what the box is for. You should have seen me at my wedding. Duff actually married my wife and I didn't have Kleenex. It was a disaster. In the late 90s, early 2000s, my dad would often visit us, and he was doing some management training things in a kind of a retired career. And we would talk about emotional intelligence. And I would just listen to him talk about how he would do things and whatnot. And he believed a lot in me. Now, going into teaching, it wasn't until that second year where I had my girls, Paige and Haley, Megan, Michaela. Who am I missing? I forgot her name. Anyway, I had a group of girls who just drove me nuts. They were sometimes the best of friends, and then they argue, and it was just hilariously driving me nuts. To the point where 3/4 through the year, two of them would come up to my desk and say, "Mr. McCracken, we need to talk." All right, let's go outside in the hallway, and we'd have it out there. And my approach is I usually go outside into the hallway and I talk to the kids and I say, just tell me what you did that you shouldn't have done. Start with that first, and then we move on to the rest. That year, I had a girl, of those girls, I had this girl named Alyssa. First day of school, she came in tears. I was the first boy teacher she had, and it scared her, and she was in tears, and Mom had to do some laps to get her settled down. But as the year went by, and as I kind of interacted with the girls more and more, Alyssa was, she still has a pretty abrupt personality. And she would be the one where we'd go in the hallway and I'd say, all right, tell me what you shouldn't have done. And Alyssa would say, she's from Newfoundland. Well, I called Frankie a snot, but Mr. McCracken, my calls him as I sees him. All right. And those girls saved me twice. So by the end of the year that year, at home, things were extremely difficult. My wife and I were dealing with a child in a crisis situation, and I was shot. I didn't know what to do. Some of my colleagues would see me crying behind scenes and then pulling it together enough to go to work. And it wasn't until my blue ribbon ceremony, which she had just talked about, that I would do this ceremony where I'd bring in parents and the kids would all be there. This is the last week of June. And I would have a blue ribbon for each kid. And I tell them, one by one, I bring them up, and I talk about something that I admire or will never forget or whatever. And I usually do it off the top of my head, which really puts me in jeopardy at times, but I always wanted to come from my heart. And so I'm going through these kids, and it was difficult. I do not like saying goodbye, and so this was the beginning of the goodbye process for that year. And in particular, Alyssa came up, and we have navigated a lot of ups and downs at that point of the year. So as she comes up, I can't speak. I'm sobbing, and she slaps me on my back, and she goes, be a man. And, we all had a laugh, and we got some tissue cleaned up. But it was the beginning of the end for me to say goodbye to Haley and Paige and Michaela and Megan, Alyssa, and so on. Ashley, Frankie. But part of that blue ribbon ceremony is there was a second ribbon, and that second ribbon I would put on a report card. And the intention there was that they would take that blue ribbon home and give it to somebody in their life that deserves it in some way, an auntie, an uncle, or whatever. And I said, I'm not going to hold you to it, just go about it. So last day of school, we had our play day. We come back to the school, and I've got on my front table, the last piece of furniture in my classroom, I've got all my report cards lined up. And the blue ribbons have been taped to the front. They're not alphabetical. They are quite honestly by importance. And so I start off, see you later, have a great summer, bye. And as I'm progressing through the row of envelopes, I know it's about to get hard. And so I get down to my girls, and at that point I can't speak. I just look, hand them off. And I'm trying to fight it back, and I can't. At that time in my life, I couldn't fight it. Didn't have any control over the emotions. And then my last one is Alyssa. So it's me and her. She's sitting on the floor, and I can't even look at her. And I hold out her envelope, and she comes up to get it, and she's tearing up, and she rips off the blue ribbon and gives it right to me. Well, frig, I just lost it. Oh my goodness, that was a tough one. And it, given where I was emotionally in my life, it saved me. It made me feel like a good teacher. It made me feel like a good parent, because one of my colleagues, Tyler Aldred, we were in a conversation with some kids once, and he brilliantly said, we were disciplining them, and he said, we didn't raise you to be like this. And I liked how he said that. I never really considered it. But we're with the kids 6 hours a day, 180 plus days a year. We're raising them. And I felt like they were my kids, and I still consider them my kids. So for her to do that, it just kept me with my head above water. Now, fast forward 2 years. November 2nd, 2010, my father's battle with Alzheimer's finally comes to an end. I get a call from my mom about 8 o'clock saying that he had passed. He had been battling with Alzheimer's for quite a while. And I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but when you're the family member of a person with Alzheimer's, the end is a relief. And I was kind of okay, because it's a death 1,000 times over. When I would go to visit and see him acting like he was a junior high kid, even less than that. You know, this is a guy that ran a college. This is the guy that was politically active at one point in his life. And now he's telling me what the characters on a shelf are saying to each other. And you just smile and you hug and you go on, because he's going to do it in 5 minutes anyway. So when I got that call from my mom, I turned to my wife and I said, Dad's dead. And I had a bit of a cry at that moment, but I was good. You know, it was. So I go to work, and I talk to my boss, Doug Tordoff, and he passes it on to the staff. And I was okay. I was honestly okay, I thought. Tyler Aldred happens to see some of my girls in the hallway and mentions it to him or to them, and doesn't tell them what to do. He just mentions it. So I'm going through my morning, and I'm starting to think, all right, I got to go for a couple of days down to Kelowna, so I'm going to have to make up some sub-plans, so I'm going to have to pick a movie for the afternoon for them to watch. And I was kind of processing it all pretty good. And lunchtime comes, my kids are outside at recess, and I'm doing whatever, and I look up at the door, and frig, there they are. And I looked up and I said, I just knew it. Oh, shoot. I said, what can I do for you? And they wanted to come and see if I was okay. Well, I was done. Big hugs, big tears, get out of here, please. And I don't know if I needed it or what, but I was appreciative of it. The next day, I'm out at supervision. My longtime grade partner, Leanne Schweitzer, she didn't know what to do with me. So she was, should I take your supervision? I said, no, I want to go out and be with my kids. And I was out there, and that next morning, it was a crisp November morning, and bounding along comes Alyssa. And she goes, how are you doing? And I looked over, she wasn't there the day before, and I looked over and I said, do you know how I should be doing? And she said, yes. And I said, I'm okay. A big hug, go on your way. When I get down to Kelowna, I sent an email to my former boss, Sandy McDonald, and I said, that was the best day of teaching I've ever had. That was me at my best, because the stuff that my dad taught me to do, I implemented in my classroom. And then when I needed it most, on 2 occasions, it came back to help me. And for that, I thank you, I thank your sister, I thank all those girls, I thank all those kids that have been there for me. I really appreciate it. And with that, I thank you for all coming tonight.